today's topic is in politics. So we're recording on the 4th of June. And so the primary season is almost over. It's basically over in the big states. I don't know if Pennsylvania has decided who the Republican nominee for Senate is going to be. It's still between Dr. Oz and is it McCormick or some guy. Anyway, they're really close in the votes. But outside of that, we care about Georgia. So in Georgia, Brian Kemp is going to be the Republican nominee for governor. He's the incumbent, of course. He's going to be facing off against Stacey Abrams, who ran unopposed. And then in the Senate race, it's going to be Georgia legends, Herschel Walker, Georgia football legend, Herschel Walker, versus current Senator Raphael Warnock, representing the Democrats. What are your thoughts on this? And as we spoke about in the previous section, there are going to be certain things that have been happening recently that might affect that vote in December, more specifically gun control stuff.
Right.
But what are your thoughts on this field, and how do you think recent events might shape the November elections?
The second question that you have there is very heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I'd be able to completely answer that now, but I definitely will try. As far as the first part, my thoughts on this. One, I guess I got to ask you a question is, why do you think Stacey Abrams was unopposed? I have an idea of why she was unopposed, but why do you think she was unopposed?
Well, I think, personally, I think she's become such a big national figure. The way she helped galvanize the vote in 2020, following her loss in 2018. The Fair Fight Action Group and all that stuff. She was touted as being one of the final picks for Biden's
vice president.
Vice president, yeah. So she's such a larger than life figure at this point in the Democratic Party that it would have been a waste of money for anyone to oppose her. So I think that's why she went unopposed.
And actually, I think that too. And then I also think there's an idea among Democrats, thinking that there's an unfinished business here. Well, first of all, there was a shitload of corruption, and I really hope that that's brought up during the campaign on Kemp's side, just from the fact that he did not recuse himself from being, what was it, the Secretary of?
Yeah. So for those who aren't aware, prior to being governor, Brian Kemp was the Secretary of State of Georgia, and I don't know if it's the same in every state, but the Secretary of State of Georgia, which Brad Raffensperger is right now. He also won his primary. Secretary of State of Georgia oversees the election. So essentially, Brian Kemp was overseeing the election that he was running in.
Right.
And there were a lot of issues with people's voter registration being turned down in majority Black areas, or things like that, where it just seemed like it didn't pass the smell test. So you're both the umpire and the participants, right?
Right.
So,
the pitcher and the umpire.
The pitcher and the umpire. There you go. You're calling balls and strikes for yourself.
And another question for you: do you know if Rittenhouse has leaned back towards Donald Trump? Because remember, there was that whole issue.
Yeah. So
is he a Trumper again?
No, he was opposed by two people, and one of them was endorsed by Donald Trump. Something Heiss, Jody Heiss, I think, opposed Raffensperger, but Raffensperger won his race. And he had this speech afterwards, this acceptance speech, and basically talking about that being a repudiation of those lies, and he didn't call out Trump by name, but he called out the fact that people were going after his character and such.
So hopefully that means that he won't be, because Kemp has been leaning back into Donald Trump.
Yeah, he basically said, "Oh, I don't," something like, "I don't, I don't mind, but I don't blame him, or I'm not upset with him." Something like that. Stop being a wuss, bro.
Right, exactly. Have some backbone, dude.
Yeah.
So with that being said, the reason I asked those questions is my thoughts on the whole on that particular race. That means that Stacey Abrams has a good chance. She really does. She has a good chance. There are people who even pro. There are some pro-Trump people who may not vote for Stacey Abrams out of spite for Kemp, but may not vote for Kemp because they still hold him as not being loyal to Donald Trump.
May not go to the ballot box.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there are some that, you know what, there are some old school Republicans too, I think. That's I think is the biggest thing, is two things, that the Democratic voters have to go out and vote for Stacey Abrams the same way that they rallied behind Joe Biden to get Donald Trump out. I would think if they can if Stacey Abrams can create the same type of atmosphere of, you know how there's a lot of people who voted for Biden because they were voting against Trump, not necessarily voting for Biden because they were fans of Biden. Is the same way I think Stacey Abrams has to bring that kind of energy of vote for me, maybe don't vote for me because you want me to win, but vote for me because you definitely don't think he should be your governor.
Yes. There is a big issue I want to touch on, which we've been kind of alluding to. But this issue actually kind of leads to why I think not just Abrams could win, but Warnock could win as well.
I think Warnock's definitely going to win.
I think I'm not so sure about that.
Really?
I think Warnock stands a better chance of winning now because Abrams is the candidate. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like the Democratic Party, whether it's like you're just right of center, just left of center, or you're all the way progressive, I feel like the Democratic Party of Georgia wants to coalesce around Stacey Abrams. And I think that turnout could help Raphael Warnock. Where Raphael Warnock might struggle is because people vote on names a lot of the time. And Herschel Walker is a huge name in Georgia. He's a huge name, straight up. Now, if you actually listen to the stuff he says, pardon my language, he's a bit of a dumbass. So this goes into the topic I want to talk about, right? Guns. Stacey Abrams has a good case against Brian Kemp because Brian Kemp, like 2 months ago, or maybe a month and a half ago, signed this thing into law where it's called the constitutional carry law or whatever. Basically, you don't have to have an open carry permit. And then you don't have to have a permit.
Because in Georgia, you can have a gun, you just can't openly carry it. So, like, say for example, if I don't have one, I can have a gun in my car and I can have a gun in my house, and I can go back and forth between those. But if I'm going to the store before this, I couldn't go into Target with my gun because I don't have an open carry permit. But I legally obtained this gun. Yeah. Now I can walk into Target with this gun, even though I don't have a.
Right. So it's one of those things where it's like we're removing the barriers to someone having safe possession of a firearm, right? That's all. To be honest, right? The gun control people, I mean, there's like levels to it. There's some people who are like, take away all guns, everything, and there's some people who are like, heck, just put some barriers in place, right? Like, if someone's required to learn how to drive by having like a year of what's it called, driver's school.
16, if you're below 18, I think you have to have
below 16
for learner's permit.
Yeah. So like people have to go through all those hoops to get the driver's license. You don't have to go through other hoops to get other sort of licenses. Why are we pulling back on things to do to get a gun, which can like actually kill people? So there's like levels to what sort of like control people want on this stuff. Whereas on the other side, it's just like nothing. Like we don't want to talk about it at all, right? So anyway, I think that Stacey Abrams has something to actually attack Brian Kemp on with this thing he signed. I think it was like an executive order, the constitutional carry thing. And then Raphael Warnock has something to go on Herschel Walker with because of his simply asinine answer to the question on what he would do about guns on Fox News. They asked him about the shooting in Uvalde, and his answer was like, well, Cain killed Abel. And then he went into something about the real problem is that all these boys looking at girls online, and we need to have a committee to like look at that. So I was like, what are you talking about, you imbecile? Like, what is what? So yeah, that's the opponent. That's the Republican nominee. Go ahead.
And if you can't do this, cut this particular part that I'm about to say out. But see if you can put in the soundbite
Oh
of
yeah,
that answer.
yeah. I'll put
Right
it
here.
in right here.
Okay. But
Yeah.
I actually think that you I think you're kind of you're not giving Raphael Warnock enough credit. I think he's actually developed himself a great reputation among his because the one thing is I don't think I think Raphael Warnock is actually I told you this when he ran 2 years ago that he gives me progressive-ish kind of vibes.
I think he's a little to the left of Ossoff actually.
Yeah. And also, you know, he was like, I'm a liberal. But I think Raphael Warnock won. I don't think he's done anything to be unpopular.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people like him. I can tell you I like him. Yeah. And as you know, I'm very hard sometimes for me to like certain Democrats.
But the thing is like, as we talked about in the previous section,
that name.
You know, well, it's name, but also people, you know, they like sound bites. They like, you know, quick, easy to consume things. Raphael Warnock already put out an ad, really good ad, and it's about, I don't remember what place in Georgia it was, but they were talking about how he helped them. They had like a storm that went through, and how like he helped them pass things in the Senate to like help them, and like he also visited on the ground and also like actual good things he's doing as a senator of Georgia. But these are things that the layman may not even know were happening. Yeah, so that's the problem. But everyone knows the name Herschel Walker.
That's true.
Yeah.
But I think what will happen is, because one thing that Raphael Warnock did a really good job at, he had a really good campaign last time. Yes. Remember when somebody did something about somebody said try to drag his name, and
so he had the puppy ads.
He had the puppy ad where he picked up the piece of crap and just threw it in the garbage, basically implying what you just said as a. So he's really good at that. And then I'll tell you one thing: in the Deep South, one thing that Raphael Warnock will always have towards him is the fact that he's a pastor. And not only is he a pastor, but he's a celebrated pastor. Yes. Because you can't go on this whole, he's a godless liberal. Like, you cannot say, the dude literally dedicated, like, I think 40 plus years of his life to God. So, you know, they have that. And then two, once you get, if you are still a fan of Herschel Walker after they talk next to each other, there's absolutely no hope for you.
Right.
Because one, Raphael Warnock is an incredible speaker. Yes. Obviously, you have to be that. He has plenty of years of experience of talking in front of people. And then two, Herschel Walker does not. Herschel Walker is probably a walking example of what, what's it called, CTE is. Because there is something, and not to shit on the man, but there's something wrong with the guy.
Yeah. And, you know, and look, CTE is, it's a very serious, you know, issue. You know, concussion thing and all.
No,
that.
And it is a serious issue. I'm not making any jokes on that.
That was literally one of the comments. So I posted the full thing, which you guys who are listening to the podcast will have heard the clip by now. I posted the full thing of what Raphael Warnock said on Facebook, and someone's comment was like, "Bro, CTE is real." Clearly this dude's taking too many hits to the head. Like he just comes across very unintelligent, like a lot. But like this is a guy that I felt Tommy Tuberville out of Alabama was bad, but this guy.
I feel like I get a very Manchurian Candidate vibe from him. I just feel like he's being forced by the right to basically say, "Oh, look, you got your black guy, we got our black guy."
Right, exactly. You can't vote against him as like a racist thing. Right, because he's also black. So
right,
what you guys got?
I will mention one thing. So that's our thoughts on Abrams v. Kemp and our thoughts of Warnock v. Walker. I want to mention something real fast. So Lucy McBath won hers. Just to let you know, this was the first time that you voted for Lucy McBath two times already, right?
Yeah. No. She's not in mine is Georgia 11.
Oh, so she's out of yours now?
But. So, just to let people know, her district was gerrymandered. So hers and Carolyn Bordeaux,
Carolyn Bordeaux.
Yeah. Their districts were merged, so only one of them could come out of it.
Yeah,
and she won.
And that's actually what I wanted to talk about: the gerrymander, the redlining. There has to be somebody who comes into politics and says, "Look, we got to end this redlining crap," because the problem ends up happening is you. I don't know who is in yours because you had Lucy McBath before, right?
No, I had. I'm in Georgia 11, so. Oh man, why can't I remember his name? He's a Republican, but I can't remember his name. But yeah.
So I never had Lucy McBath. I had Bordeaux and then Lucy McBath. Then they merged them together to basically do that. They did that on purpose. They did it a couple years ago in Ohio with Dennis Kucinich versus somebody. There's been famous ones, and this is one of the latest ones. Because the thing is, though, even though I voted for Lucy McBath because Carolyn Bordeaux is a little bit too, she's not liberal enough for me.
Yeah. And Lucy McBath is a big gun control advocate.
She is.
Her son was killed.
Her son was the one that was murdered in Florida, right? Because his music was too loud.
Yeah.
That was the reason why the guy felt threatened her. And it's one of the few cases where they got it right, where that guy ended up going to jail and staying in jail.
Yeah.
But the thing I would say about I almost didn't vote for Lucy McBath, and you want to know why?
Why?
I got too many damn ads in the mail. I would say if I got 12 of her in like a week, I got one of Carolyn Bordeaux. But that might also be the reason why she lost too, because she wasn't as aggressive as Lucy McBath was.
So look, I am someone who hates ads and spam. Dude, I get like spam calls at least once an hour. Like, it's bad. So I hate it. But I'm also someone who is, infinitely worried about turnouts for the Democrats, and turnout has always been an issue. Turnout has never been an issue for the Republicans. Republicans will go out and vote. Democrats, not so much. So for me, it's like, if it's another thing that's reminding people that there's an election, all right.
Go for it.
Like someone called me telling me, this is maybe like a day after I voted, telling me, hey, there's a primary and this is running, you should go. And I was like, dude, I already voted. They're like, okay, good. I'm glad that you're
okay,
that you're involved. Yeah. But then not everyone is involved, right? So it's one of those like,
no, I honestly, and I even said this, I was like, next time I have the show with Zino, I'm gonna be like, I almost didn't vote for Lucy. I voted for Lucy McBath because I looked them both up and I saw which one was the more progressive one, which was Lucy McBath. So that was my reason for voting for her. But it was just one of those things. It's just like it was surprising to me that she was running, because I had never gotten Lucy McBath ads before, and she's been in politics for I think at least 2 election cycles, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Before this one.
Yes.
And it was just one of those things. Is I'm like, man, and I went and voted the very last second, right?
Like election day.
On election day, at 6:30.
Okay.
They closed the polls at 7.
Yeah.
Which I think is a problem. I was like, why they should try to have. I personally believe they should have elections open until 9.
Well, but also election should be should be a federal holiday or a state holiday if it's primaries.
Exactly. And I think, honestly, I know like I said, I started on their job, so I got to see some of the emails that they were sending prior to the election. And then I also had the previous emails from my other job because I was still working when the election happened. So some jobs are starting to get really good at being like, hey, if you guys have to go vote, let us know. And some of them are paying for it, right?
Yeah. Aflac was pretty good about that. Like, I used to work for Aflac once upon a time. But
yeah, so it's just one of those things where, like, I was like, at least I feel like some jobs are trying to do right by their people, because their people are saying, we're going to leave. We're going to go vote, whatever. But the redlining thing, man, that's just crazy to me, because, like I said, I went at the very last minute. I got there at 6:30. I gave my ID. There was nobody there, but I gave my ID, and the guy was like, you don't vote here. I was like, dude, I voted here since I've been living there in 2017.
Yeah, happened to my parents too. They couldn't vote where they normally voted.
And don't get me wrong, the good thing is, like, he was like, well, listen, the good thing is your voting center is going to be really close to your house, because that's the way they do it. Yeah. So he gave me the address, and I went, and then I went in there, and then I looked at the clock, and I was like, I was 10 minutes away from not being able to vote.
Yeah.
And it's just, and don't get me wrong, it was a little bit of a misstep on my end because they did send me, I do recall them sending me something, but it shouldn't be. Why can't I vote anywhere?
It's a misstep on your end, but it shouldn't be the case, right? It shouldn't be like, oh, so you almost had it. You know, no, that's not voting. It's supposed to be. That's not the.
Well, it's not even that. It is early voting. You can vote anywhere, as long as you're within your. I guess it's within your county or within that area.
Well, no. So my parents normally, like for the last 6 years or so, they've always voted in the same place, in the Smyrna area. They live in Marietta, but they've always voted like in Smyrna, and like they've been allowed to. And then for some reason, this time they're like, no, you can't vote here, and they told them where to go. But one thing I wanted to touch on before we get off of politics, yeah. So I was of the opinion that Democrats are going to get slaughtered in November because the incumbent is a Democrat. So anytime, the people are always like, well, my life, I don't have $1 million yet, so it must be the Democrats' fault. But then
I know, I know you were about to say, but I've found the pattern to mostly be that whenever it's a Republican incumbent, Republicans have a good chance of winning, right?
But whenever a better chance of winning than Democrats with the incumbents,
because all they're doing is playing it on the Democrats, right?
Yeah.
But when Democrats are the incumbent, for some reason it ends up being that the Democrats end up losing because Republicans basically throw out the thing is like, hey, they haven't fixed it for you yet.
Yeah, exactly. Democrats are expected to do. Republicans are expected to complain about, or they're expected to highlight what's not right, whereas Democrats are just expected to do. So the thing I wanted to get to is, I thought they were going to get slaughtered because normally Democrats, incumbents, Democrats don't do as well, but it's a little worse now because there's inflation, there's a geopolitical conflict in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine, that's affecting literally the world's economy. Inflation isn't just here, which is so funny when they blame the Democrats. They're like, the Democrats aren't ruling England or Germany and other stuff, but inflation is happening there too. So, so I thought they were going to get slaughtered, and then this whole gun thing happens. The shooting in Uvalde, the shooting in Buffalo, it's just like it's a constant thing. And
where else was the shooting in the hospital? Was that
that's Oklahoma, I think, Oklahoma City. So I wanted to get your take. Do you think that if there's enough of a groundswell of like, look, we're tired of Republicans' inaction on shootings, do you think that can actually push the election in favor of Abrams, Warnock, and maybe other Democrats? Or do you think it's happening too early enough in the year that by November it's a non-issue?
I would ask you this. Do you think, because remember, I think a lot of the reason why Democrats won the last election cycle was because that was when all those Black Lives Matter protests were happening, because we just kept seeing unarmed Black individuals getting killed, right?
Yeah.
And that, I think, provided a lot of ammunition. I don't want to say ammunition, but a lot of. I know what you mean. No, not ammunition. The way I'm trying to use is It just provided the Democrats.
It was fodder for the Democrats to use.
Yes. So I feel that if
I can still hear you.
Yeah, I feel like if they could keep doing this, I'm sorry, I'm trying to send a voicemail. There we go. But I feel like if they could keep doing this, if they can keep. I'm sorry. That's not what I just like. I don't want them to keep doing it. What I'm saying is, if they can keep this momentum of people being upset, and it's going to have to fall down on. And I don't mean this on. It's up to ordinary Americans to keep this momentum for the Democrats. I mean, it's up to ordinary Americans to keep this momentum going for changes in the law.
Yeah.
And I think what ends up happening, it's what's going to be the reaction from, because you sense that this one is the same as Sandy Hook, but for some reason it's hitting a little different.
Well, I think the information age is further along now than during Sandy Hook. I actually met someone in real life last year that told me that she believes Sandy Hook was a hoax.
Hoax, yeah.
No irony to it. It boggles my mind. Anyway, George Floyd was murdered in May of 2020, and the whole the Black Lives Matter summer and onwards like went for a good 4+ months, probably all the way up to election day.
Close to it, yeah.
And if people like keep on it with the gun control thing and like start doing marches or whatever, like demanding change, then maybe. That on top of the fact that in the summer, we're going to have the official ruling from the Supreme Court where they're striking down Roe v. Wade.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, you're going to have in the summer the January 6th committee hearings that's going to be on prime time. There might be things in there that actually get people to like look and
momentum.
Like, yeah, maybe the Republicans are pieces of shit. You know?
Well, and to add to the pieces of shit, Lindsey Graham.
Sorry, Republican representatives. I don't mean like
not
Republican
Republican
voters,
spirits, but representatives. Because the thing is, though, and who was it that said it? Steve Kerr.
Yes.
He had a passionate speech. And I'd hate to ask you to do this, but I would love it if you put that in somewhere here.
This happened on the day of the shoot.
On the day of.
They had a game against Dallas that night.
And he said something that smacked me right in the face. When he said, everybody wants this. Everybody wants changes in these laws. We just have a handful of politicians who are holding the country hostage. Some along those lines is what he said, where they're holding the country hostage from changing these kind of laws, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm not gonna say that he was the spark, but I'm just saying that there was a spark there. Like it just feels different. I honestly don't think the information between now and Sandy Hook is that much different. I think what ends up happening is you're starting to find out certain things that are just driving even more anger, right? The fact that the Uvalde police were so bad, cowardly,
that they didn't go in,
and so incompetent, wouldn't go in. You had a mom, like you literally had a mom do what most parents would say they would do, like her run into the building and save her children, get her children out. And it's just, I feel like that on top of the fact that people are just like, there's clips of 20 years ago is when they were doing, like we talked about Columbine. Mm-hmm. Thoughts and prayers being said by Republican representatives every single time with no change. And then what I was going to go with the POS politicians is Lindsey Graham just proposed something. And a lot of people are shitting on him justifiably about he'll do anything but change the law. He was saying it's time to call up our veterans and our retired military personnel to start protecting schools. And I'm like, listen, somebody mentioned something on Facebook. One of my friends, she mentioned something on Facebook about how schools, their security should be the same as corporate buildings, which I'm like, that's true. I agree. I actually agree with that. Mm-hmm. I think that would be good where, you have the key cards and stuff like that, because like it that would make sense to me. But the thing is, that is not an issue. That is not an answer to mass murders. That's an answer to safety. Yeah. That's a safety measure. You're not answering. We still have to do measures to curb killings. Remember, the Onion literally releases their tweet every single time this happens.
Yeah.
Nothing can happen. Nothing can be done, says the country the only country that this happens in on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And it's
dude, we could have like an hour-long or 30-minute long section on just the different ways that Republicans want to resolve this, other than looking at guns as an issue.
Looking at guns.
There was Ted Cruz talking about reducing it to just one door in the school, so that he only has one way to come inside.
That's not a fire hazard.
Right. There was that. There's the making veterans security in our schools. Because we don't have
targeting
PTSD.
Horny boys, according to Herschel Walker.
Herschel Walker targeting boys looking at girls. There's the one about arming teachers, right? Because that's exactly what they want to be doing. Right? they go to they get the education degree so that they can be on the lookout for like shootings and like there's so many different things that they proposed other than, hey, let's actually maybe look at guns as an issue. But
so to go back to what you were saying is if the Democrats, the people who are running on the right side on this issue, not the right, but on the right side of this issue, meaning
the correct side.
let's do what we need to do to make sure that this stops happening on a regular basis. Because in the span of a week, like, dude, we didn't do a top 5 today, but and I hate to say this morbidly, but we could literally have a top 5 on the top 5 worst mass massacres in the last year.
Yeah.
And guess what? If we listed them, they would literally be among the worst massacres to happen ever in the world.
Yeah.
It's something that's not normal, that is becoming normal.
Well, so a mass shooting, I think, is defined as like any shooting that has like 4 or more people.
Is it 4 more? I thought it was actually about 2 to 3.
Well, I don't know. So there was a CNN
3.
thing I was looking at that said 4 or more. And if that's the case, there's been like 230 mass shootings already.
Right.
They haven't even been 230 days in the year yet. So that's crazy. But anyway, sorry, that's our politics section. We want to see if that would affect how the midterms go.
I think it will.
Yes. Okay.
I think it will. I think, like I said, but the Democrats cannot, if they drop the ball, then it's their own fault, because they're like always, there's momentum. There was the momentum in 2020. There's momentum going in now, right? And it's one of those things is like, and it's also falls onto people. Like don't be tricked into falling for this guy because, he doesn't like Donald, you know what I mean? Like, he likes Donald Trump, so I'm no, how about you go for the person who's actually saying, hey, we need to do measurements to make things safer for everybody.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. That's our politics section.